There's something else that makes me think about from the publisher angle and from just you were talking about Microsoft and what do they want to be when they grow up.
Yeah.
I, the idea in my head, I'll see if I can articulate this, is there were a group of people, both in existing publishers and actually in the FANG companies or those like that, thought that the way I made a successful game is to throw a bunch of senior people and a bunch of money at it. If I
Yeah.
just shoot the money cannon at games hard enough, then something good is going to come out the other side. And I think, again, if you'd been in the industry a long time, you knew this didn't work. Because I know Riot tried this, I know Blizzard tried this. Everybody's always
All of them. Everyone's tried it.
everybody's tried like most senior people, tons of money, go make. Obviously, you're going to succeed, right? And it's like, no, because that's not the formula. May involve money, and it probably involves senior people too. But it's not just those things shoved together and leave it alone for 5 years, and then something good's going to come out. It's so much more complicated than that. It's so much more difficult to do. This is catching because but just yesterday I was responding to a video and someone was saying, "Oh, AAA is doing this, Indie's doing this." Like I said, I get too involved in this debate, but they were just, all you have to do is just go make a fun game. And I'm just sitting there. Do you
Yeah.
have any idea what you just said? You act like it's easy. And I'm like, then go do it, man. Go do it. Because if you know how to do that, because you watched a couple indie successes, our hindsight is 2020. We can always rationalize why that thing succeeded and we'll say we knew and all this different stuff. But the reality is, if you're not calling it before, I'm sorry, you didn't know. And if so many people don't know, and they try to shoot like, Netflix tried to shoot the money cannon, is trying to shoot the money cannon, I think.
Yep.
Amazon's shooting the money cannon or
Yep.
shot the, and like you said, chaos, right? Like, it didn't work, and I think Microsoft has fallen into that as well. If I just acquire enough studios and shoot enough money at them, then I'll get good things, right? And I get that's an oversimplification, but there was almost that mentality, and the VCs bought into that during the COVID years, and it was like, this isn't a money solved problem.
The other thing is when people who start studios is what I found is they have these game directors that are studio directors, and the worst thing you can do is put a fox watching the house. You have to have those checks and balances. You have to have a business person that understands the creative side and learns to make sure that the creative and the business work together so they can build something that is successful, not an art project. That's what Bethesda used to call them. The chairman, Robert Altman, used to say, that's a art project, but it wasn't successful from a business point of view. And
Right.
those are really hard to really get through to people. They won awards, but they weren't successful in selling units, right?
Yep.
Making money that they're desperately needed for a company. And I think that balance, that leadership balance between the creative and the business, that friction is good, but you need to have that in order to start a studio. And in order for a successful studio to be there, you have to have those two yin and yang together, working together to make that happen. That to me is some of the recipe that's missing. And some of these studios is they have these big game directors or studio heads, and that's not where they need to be because again, it's the fox watching the hen house. That's not a great idea, right? But they need that balance. They need the guardrails around them to realize their vision and work with them to realize their business from a business point of view. Again, that's that creative and that business side. That business side is in that creative, that friction really hasn't been worked out well in our industry, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
If I had to say anything, that has been a gap. And that's really where I see the failures happen, to be honest with you
Yeah. It's
is when those gap occurs.
I talked to a guy a few times. I always enjoy chatting with him. His name is Graham McAllister, and he worked in, I think, like user testing and research and things like that for a minute. And he ended up leaving to go back and get a degree, a master's degree in at the London School of Economics, and he's studying game vision. And he said that like it is the number one predictor of success or failure as far as anything is, it's game vision. But when he thinks about what game vision is, he says it contains those two components you were just describing. And
Yeah.
it has to have a business side to it, and it has to have the creative game side
Yeah.
to it. And if
Yes.
these things aren't overlapping, what you're going to end up with is one trying to derive the other, or people not understanding each other, and they have different goals that they're shooting for. And to me, it comes back to what you said earlier, which is leadership is so important in this because what's
Yes.
a core function of leadership to align people to the shared goal.
That's correct.
And if I have these two different groups and they have two different goal states, then I'm setting off on the wrong foot as they're going to pull constantly against each other. And you saw that both internal to studios as they would have the argument between the business people and the creative people. And then you also saw it between the studio and the publisher level.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so you have these like pulling in different directions constantly because we're not actually saying, okay, we need a vision. The vision has a business piece to it, it has a creative piece to it. And those things need to line up if we're going to have a good chance of succeeding. But so many studios don't do that work.
No, they don't. And that's where that's the gap, that fairy that I talk about happens. Again, AI is not going to solve that problem.
No.
And again, one of the, like I said, there's lots of issues, and that we're just touching on some of them in this podcast. That I think a sustainable production, making sure that we spend $230 million or $250 million on a project. How many units we have to sell to make up for that is that's that business and the creative gap that comes into play, and that's not, if they're not aligned, could be huge, right? Yes, it's a great art piece, but it only sold 1,000,000 units. Unfortunately, we needed to sell 8 in order to break even.
Yeah.
Right? Holy crap. What do you do?
Right.
And then layoffs happen and other things like that. So, after the game is released.
Yeah. It's
That
almost,
go ahead.
oh no, it's almost like in the movies, there were some movies that were known to be, what's it called? The Cannes film festivals, like, I don't know, Sundance Film Festival, like the
Yeah,
place where these are the art project ones, and they've
right,
got a moderate, small to moderate budget, but they're more the artsy side. We're not
yes,
expecting this to do super well in theaters, but I think Hollywood is encountering this exact same problem that
yeah,
we are, which is they're starting to spend more money on art projects because they're more expensive than they'd ever been. And they're having this same issue of, oh, shoot, we just spent $150 million budget on an art project that's going to return us not very much money. And that's a lot of, we're going to need quite a few successful blockbusters in order to make up for all this money we're spending on. And again, there was a strategy to it, right? Because you wanted to be known for the awards you got
yeah,
and like
yes,
all this different, there was a fame element to it and a credibility and these things. And I'm not, it's not wrong to ever do an art project, but it is just, I think what you're calling out, you need to recognize what is what and make sure you don't have too many art projects because, man, like you said, if you needed to sell 8 million, the fact that you're excited about one,
yeah,
that's not paying anybody's bills.
exactly. And that's the big, again, when those gaps happen, they can cause rifts that'll last for a while. And again, I think that again, it's getting harder and harder to do hits too, by the way,
Yeah.
because of the saturation of this market. There's a lot of games coming out all the time. And again, getting that hit is also a secret sauce that just happens, like I said, luck and timing and other things like that.
Yeah.
And timing is important. Like it releases right between nothing. And suddenly there's tons of oxygen in the channel and people are looking for cool stuff to
Yep.
do. Boom, you hit it.
Yep.
And so that those again, all those things are affecting of whether you're successful or not in something that's hard to predict.